Welcome back, everyone. Well, it's now time to go from the musical frying pan and into the fire, from Beethoven to Berlioz. Hector Berlioz, one of the very mightiest geniuses of French music and one of the signal characters of the Romantic era, the Age of Revolution. I'm talking specifically about that early Romantic era, the early 19th century, and most specifically France, where everything was happening and everybody who was somebody wanted to be part of it. It truly boggles the mind to think that there is only 6 years difference between the Vienna of 1824, which saw the premiere of the Beethoven Ninth Symphony, and the Paris of 1830, which saw the premiere of Hector Berlioz's most famous work, one of the most popular symphonies in all the repertoire, and deservedly so, his Symphonie Fantastique, fantastic symphony or fantastical symphony. In that definition, not like fantastic symphony, but fantastical symphony, an episode in the life of an artist. Again, 6 years have passed between Beethoven 9 and the Berlioz Fantastique, but it's an entire world away. In 1824, it's as if the world has settled into a new order. Napoleon has finally been defeated in 1815. The Congress of Vienna, the beginning of the history of the golden age of diplomacy, restores the Bourbon monarchy to France. The old Sun Kings are back, and hopefully they were going to be better than ever, but actually not. By 1830 in Paris, Charles X, who was the last of the Sun Kings, is pretty much more decadent and depraved than his three predecessors combined. And once again, in the summer of 1830, France is plunged into revolution. This one was one of the more milder ones. They got rid of those decadent Bourbons and replaced them with the House of Orleans. And so began in 1830 the 18-year reign of King Louis Philippe, as he is forever known, the bourgeois king, the middle-class king, who is going to supposedly reign more or less in a more constitutional style monarchy. Until, of course, the next French Revolution in 1848. I hope you're keeping these French revolutions, in the right order, because when we get to the end, there'll be questions. It's in this atmosphere of the Paris of 1830 that, again, we have the July Revolution, July Monarchy, and then on the theatrical stage, Victor Hugo, the man who gave us Les Miserables, Les Mis, he has just had the debut of his just earth-scorching romantic drama Hernani, and then Berlioz writes the Symphonie Fantastique. The circumstances of the composition of the Symphonie Fantastique are so bizarre that if they weren't true, they would have been the stuff of kind of a tearjerker Hollywood movie. Hector Berlioz is the least likely hero of 19th century French music. A doctor's son from Grenoble of a very fitful temperament, his only musical instrument that he plays is the guitar. Now, nothing against the guitar, but he applies and miraculously wins entrance to the Paris Conservatory, which you must remember in the early 19th century was by far, by miles, the greatest, most rigorous music conservatory in the whole world. It was one of the few great things about Napoleon that they established this national conservatory. He somehow gets his way into the Paris Conservatory, even though his only instrument is the guitar, not the piano, organ, violin, the guitar. He actually, after he graduates, wins the Prix de Rome, the Rome Prize, which was this incredibly prestigious award where you got to spend 3 years at the Villa Medici in Rome. Again, as we've been talking, not only France, but Italy. Rome is still, all roads are still leading to Rome. In music and in painting in the early 19th century, you've got to get yourself to Italy. So there was this great prize awarded and intensely competitive. Berlioz wins it. Then it's in 1827 that Berlioz goes to the theater, and a company of Shakespearean actors from England are performing in England. Sorry, I should say in English, not in French, but they're performing in English some of the great Shakespeare plays. And the young lady playing Ophelia in Hamlet is a young Irish actress named Harriet Smithson, who does not speak a word of French. And Berlioz doesn't speak a word of English. But you have to remember this, in France and in Germany at this time, Shakespeare mania was taking over Europe. People were just crazy, insane over Shakespeare's plays. And the young Berlioz buys a ticket and sees Harriet Smithson on stage playing Ophelia, again in English, and he instantly falls not in love, completely and totally infatuated with her. He spends 3 years trying to get her attention, and he decides that the only way he's going to do it is to scrape every penny he has together, call in every favor from every friend and colleague he knows in the business, and write for a performance of 200 musicians a fantastic symphony telling basically an autobiographical tale about how Berlioz, the composer, in this fit of infatuation over Harriet Smithson, takes a small but not lethal dose of opium and has a series of experiences, nightmares, and dreams. And the result of that is the symphony in 5 movements known as the Symphonie Fantastique. Now, later on in his career, when the symphony was formally published, and this happens so often in the history of music, so many times composers do this. Mahler did this a lot, actually. Tchaikovsky did this. By this point, he's saying, well, you don't really have to know what's going on in the story. You can just enjoy the music as music. But this is truly a programmed symphony, a programmatic symphony in which the music is literally describing, in psychological terms, a series of human events. A drama without words. And the magic of classical music is that we can all go into a performance of a piece like this, and because there are no words or images, all the images are in our own mind, we can have our own individual, unique experience from it, which is why we keep going back to these great works of music throughout our lives. The symphony is in 5 movements, 5 episodes. The first movement is called Reveries and Passions, where you hear this theme at the very beginning. It's a slow introduction with a sonata allegro. As you all know, that's the standard form of a first movement of a symphony, where you hear this achingly beautiful idea in the first violins, supported by muted strings. And it actually comes from a cantata he had written several years before, which was also on the subject of unrequited love. Hector Berlioz basically spent his whole life in a state of unrequited love. We then get to the main allegro body of this first movement, which is, again, we've had the reveries and now we have the passions. This essay in explosive passion, which is also an incredible essay, just again in sonata form, the way he takes these ideas and develops them and reprises them. But what you have to remember most of all, the main theme of the first movement, the the idée fixe, the fixed idea, that is the music that represents Berlioz's yearning for his beloved. In this great 19th century Romantic era default mode, and I say this again objectively, the way male artists would put women on pedestals, and then when they're disappointed, they're portrayed as the opposite, which we'll get to later. The second movement, the scene at the ball, our young artist hero goes to a ball to try to get his mind off his romantic troubles, and guess what? There he sees her. He sees her at the other end of the room, and everything kind of falls apart. The third movement, the scène au champ, the scene in the countryside. When I was a kid, this central slow movement bored me to tears. And now, as I get older, I can't get enough of it. It's this 15-minute essay in solitude. Our artist hero has escaped to the countryside. And this is where Berlioz is truly not literally quoting Beethoven, but he's paying homage to Beethoven, the Beethoven of the Pastoral Symphony, where the artist is trying to find solace in the beauty of nature. And you hear two shepherd boys at either end of a valley piping away to each other. You know, we're all cooped up in solitude, but you know, in 1830, a shepherd boy would go out into the countryside to tend the flock, and he wouldn't see another human being for 6 months. That was, I mean, you think we got solitude. So he hears these two lonely shepherds piping to, you know, saying hello to each other across the valley. And then there's this rumble of thunder in the distance, and Berlioz is once again, our hero is brought into the, you know, he's somehow is now afflicted with all those bad feelings he tried to get away from when he got out of the city. And then at the end of the movement, one of the shepherd boys is piping away, but this time there's no answer. There is no reply. At this point, the artist is so despondent that he takes that dose of opium, and he suddenly has this horrific nightmare that he has murdered his beloved, his unrequited love. And he is now, because this is again the age of revolution in France, he's being carted off, you guessed it, carted off to the guillotine. All of these grotesque people, you know, yelling and screaming and laughing at him. At the end of the movement, it's as if he sees his beloved again, but no, the guillotine falls. The last of the symphony's 5 movements, the finale, is the Witch's Sabbath, in which our artist hero, who doesn't seem very heroic by this point, I don't know about you, but our protagonist is in some kind of afterlife, and he is caught in the middle of this witch's Sabbath. And then his beloved, again, this is this romantic, one of the more, how does one say it, the embarrassing, very immoral sides of the Romantic era in the arts, like it happens in so many novels. His beloved, the unrequited beloved, she's no longer the angel. She's no longer the saintly figure on the pedestal. Now she is the common whore, and she is participating in this witch's Sabbath. The fixed idea, that idea from the first movement, now is in this devilish dance in which it's combined with the old medieval funeral tune, the Dies Irae. You know what that is, though. That's the one that goes don 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 don, and it's all combined into this incredible witch's cauldron of music. Finally gets resolved in this blazing major chord at the end. And this is actually at which Berlioz wants the artist to suddenly wake up from his nightmare, wake up from his dream, and get back to the world of reality. Well, my friends, in the world of reality, guess what? Berlioz got the girl. Harriet Smithson showed up at one of those performances of the Fantastique, and yes, they were eventually married. And as you can probably guess, the marriage was a disaster. So sometimes, you know, fantasy and reality are best left separate. I think that is the greatest lesson of the Symphonie Fantastique. But gosh, it makes for an amazing musical experience. Now, one of the greatest musical experiences in live performance of this amazing work. From 1975, Leonard Bernstein conducts the French National Orchestra, which was one of his great kind of partner orchestras over the course of his storied career. French National Orchestra, the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées in Paris, France, 1975. It doesn't get better than this. The music, the performance, even the cinematography, the camera work in this performance is amazing. Each member of the orchestra seems like a character in a French painting. An amazing experience. You're in for a treat. Hector Berlioz, Symphonie Fantastique.